quick review of what a function is. A function is a relationship where every x or input value has no more than one output or y value. So every x value we input into our relationship will give us one y value outputted. We can tell if a relationship is a function from the graph that relationship forms. And we do so using what we call the vertical line test. So for the vertical line test, we need a vertical line. I've got a blue one here. And we start at the leftmost end of our function, of our graph. We move from left to right with that vertical line. So you can see that I have no intersections with the graph. And as I move towards the right, I start intersecting with my graph. And you can see that I'm intersecting at one point all the way from left to the right edge of the graph. There were no points along that graph where I intersected more than once with the graph. So what that tells me from my vertical line test is that this first graph is a function. The second graph, we do the same thing. We move our vertical line from left to right. We have one point of intersection, just one point of intersection, all the way along until the end. So once again, that's a function. Our third graph, as we move from left to right, we intersect at one point to the end. So each x value only has one possible y value. We move to our third graph. As we move from left to right, we can see intersecting at one point, all the way along. There's only one point of intersection until we reach the edge. Now what this tells me is my blue vertical line is representing an input or an x value. Here it's representing an x value of 2. Here it's representing an x value of 1, x value of 0, x value of -1 as I move it along. And what we're looking for is for that graph to only have one possible y value, or a maximum of one point where it intersects. We do have some points, like over here, just larger than 2, where it doesn't have a y value at all, where those values are not included on our graph. But if it has no more than one possible intersection point, or one y value for each x value, then it's a function. Let's have a look at some that are not functions. As we move from left to right with our vertical line, we can see here, for example, at this point -1, that there are two possible y values. My blue line is intersecting the function at 2 points. And so that tells me that this is not that this graph is not a function, because the graph has two possible y values for that x value. And that continues all the way along until we get to the end. So because we're intersecting the graph at 2 points, it is not a function. Our second graph, once again, as we move from left to right, we can see at this point here, I'm actually intersecting that graph at 3 points. So there are 3 possible y values for that x value. And it's only a function if it has no more than one possible y value. So the second one is not a function. Our third graph here, we can see as I move my vertical line across, we reach a point where it perfectly overlaps the entire graph. What that's telling me is for the x value x equals 2, there are an infinite number of y values, which is definitely more than 1. So that's not a function because we're intersecting or we're crossing over at an infinite number of points with this vertical line. And our fourth function, as we move along, once again, we've got more than one point of intersection. So this x value has more than one possible y value, and so it is not a function. So we use our vertical line moving from left to right along the graph. If it intersects ever at more than one point, it's not a function. But if it only ever intersects at a maximum of 1 point at a time, then that graph is a function.